That's a sample of everything the CSU collected from the blast. There's melted glass, there's multiple explosive fragments, and trace residue, and it looks like nitroglycerin, which means that we're dealing with more than just a basement nut job.
Someone with training.
I sat on editing this episode for a while, and I think the reason for that is that I just don't have much to say about it. It's a perfectly adequate episode. The militia group that Shrapnel works for is never even mentioned again. I guess it doesn't need to be, since Arrow is a series based in Starling City, but it's weird how many organizations just exist in the Arrowverse that are mentioned a single time and never again. See also the Flash Season 4 Episode 15, Enter Flash Time. How does Oliver activate his comms here without touching his chest?
Felicity.
Here. Did you get him?
Not only does he activate his comms this way in both past and future episodes, but he does it earlier in this very episode, though notably that instance is missing its sound effect. How the island crew got the box of Mirakuru can kinda be explained away because Ivo was so invested in making Oliver choose who to save instead of getting away with what he wanted. Then again, why any of them except Slade are even alive is beyond me. And that's really all I can say about the island stuff, since the only other thing that happens in this episode is that Slade chokes a bitch. I know hacking is more Felicity's thing, and this isn't a major plot point in the episode, but Dig hacks stuff in Season 1. Why does he have trouble doing so here when it's basically the same thing he already did?
Diggle.
Hey man, this is not my thing. Stag Chemical lit up 10 minutes ago. I hacked into Stag's video security feeds, parked right on the street running along the plant.
If Diggle can hack in there, what's the point of Felicity being on the team? And also, Oliver's not stupid. I'm sure he can hack and shit like that too. I don't hate Felicity. I just want to point that out. Just for, like, later seasons and stuff like that, in case it's like Oliver can't do this without Felicity, Oliver can't do that without Felicity, or something like that. I just want to point it out. Neither Oliver nor Diggle is stupid. They just don't have as much tech experience as Felicity does. And there's also the stuff about tension in Team Arrow, which rarely ever happens during the first 2 seasons because it didn't need to. We hadn't gotten to the point where every single new character just ended up on Team Arrow, Team Flash, etc., so they were allowed to operate like a well-oiled machine. You know, like they should. Oliver does tend to lash out at people when he's scared, so while it's hard to watch him and Felicity argue for an entire episode, it's not necessarily out of character. Oliver's not like Barry Allen, a character who's a lot more emotive, at least during the first 3 seasons when he's still the main character of his own show. Oliver's emotions are a lot more subtle, so it feels out of character when he gets overly angry or scared, etc. And even when Dig acknowledges that nothing seems to spook Oliver, Oliver twists that on its head and says that that should show Dig how serious of a threat Mirakuru is. Some character conflict doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing, but when that conflict interferes with a mission, that's when it goes too far. I found this line from Felicity to be incredibly out of pocket.
You sure you want me doing this? My head might not exactly be in the game.
Felicity!
This whole thing does have a good resolution, though.
I understand that this Mirakuru thing has you freaked out. And I have been in Central City.
When you are there, it just made me realize how much I need you here. I rely on you.
Does that mean I have a shot at Employee of the Month?
You're not my employee. You're my partner. Barry's gonna wake up. Well, maybe he's dreaming about you.
Actually, there's conflicting cases about whether coma patients can in fact dream normally, or they're more like hallucinating. Thank you.
Also, no, Felicity, the term dead man switch is not sexist. What, because it's dead man switch? Where does that term come from? And am I really looking this up just to prove a point? Fuck yeah, I am. They prevent a disaster if the equipment operator suddenly dies or becomes incapacitated. Alternative names, here we go. Dead man control, dead man button, dead man trigger. Replace dead mans or dead men with enabling or live man. Driver safety device. Operator pressure control, vigilance control, alerter system, or kill cord. Slade was already erratic before he got the Mirakuru in his system, so I choose to believe that it was just amplifying what was already inside of him. And you can even buy that as an explanation based on what we see from Roy later this season. Roy is a deeply angry person, so the Mirakuru makes him angrier. If we're supposed to buy that Mirakuru turned Slade into the villain, then that really takes the impact out of what made Slade cool, and I don't like that. Slade was always set up to be the villain, but he was just never as physically aggressive before. The Mirakuru mixed in with Shadow's death is what pushed him over the edge. Maybe it's because we don't see blood in the skull mask in this episode, but he honestly doesn't seem to have any sinister intentions here, which just reinforces my point from this video about him actually caring about Starling City on some level. But then you get to the stuff about how he killed his own dad and let his mother take the fall for it when he was a child, and you remember that he's a goddamn sociopath, and that's not even mentioning the speech he gives Laurel. After reading up on Shrapnel, I can tell you just how bad of an adaptation this is. He actually has some really cool metahuman powers in the comics that they just don't use in either of his appearances in the show. Much like Solomon Grundy, this is another way that Arrow just kinda throws in a character from the comics just because they can. Really, all of the Arrowverse shows are guilty of that, but I feel like Arrow does it the worst out of them. At least when The Flash adapts a character like Sand Demon, The Mist, or Null, they all still have some kind of superpower, even if that superpower is dumb, like the ability to steal anybody's car. Arrow, unfortunately, has to make those characters more grounded because, 1, metahumans aren't a thing in this universe yet, and 2, the show features only 2 superpowered characters on a team through its entire run. And no, Roy doesn't count. His powers are only temporary, and he's fighting other bad guys with the same powers as him until he's cured. Whenever Arrow has a superpowered villain, they're either a villain of the week or Damien Dark. I'm not doing the KSI no clip again. Since Oliver has the mask now, it's cool to see that they edited the season's intro sequence to include it. That ending shot of Oliver and Blood shaking hands as his mother says not to trust him is pretty good. Not exactly unique, but that doesn't make it bad. I like seeing the graves of Yao Fei, Robert Queen, and Shadow on Lian Yu. I also like seeing Oliver saving people. We always see Oliver stopping criminals, but we never see him actually going and saving people in a Superman-esque way, and I'm glad this episode gave us that, however briefly. There's also a name drop of the Green Lantern character Saint Walker through the mental hospital Blood's mother is in. I don't like how they shot Shrapnel throwing the bombs and other things of that nature. It looks very lazily done to me. That light clearly goes past Oliver's arrow as he's trying to move it along his bow, though. Doesn't matter how clever that move was if I can see it happen in the episode. Also, am I supposed to assume Ivo's men dropped a razor and shaving cream when Slade yeeted them into trees in the last episode? I'm not the only one that thinks it's weird for Slade to suddenly be missing his beard, right? Then again, I guess I could say that about all of the characters. Like Burned from last season, this episode more just serves to reintroduce us to the world and characters. As such, there's not really much that happens in the episode outside of us getting some backstory on Blood and Slade taking off with the Mirakuru. Oh yeah, and the episode introduces Shrapnel, but his entire reason for existing is to die in the Suicide Squad episode, so I can't even really give the episode points for that. The more that I watched this episode, the less that I was into it. I remember this episode being decent, and I got exactly what I expected. This episode's alright, but it's nothing to write home about.
You can't trust